My name is Jesper Andersen, and I am associate professor here in Copenhagen at the Royal Academy of Music. And I'm working as a faculty member at the Tonmeister department. So actually I'm a sound engineer and music producer. And I've been working extensively with developing our distance learning facilities here, along with Thomas Solak that you have on stage there in Helsinki. And what I would like to talk to you about today is a very big research project we've had here at our school within distance learning. So I will make a sort of a presentation of this project. I would say first of all, as an introduction, that I'm not a scientist. And that means that my presentation will be more from a user perspective. And I think maybe that will be good for you, because sometimes I might say some things that is going a little bit further than what a scientist would say. They always have to keep everything extremely backed up by all of their facts. I think I can be a little bit more freely, and then I would say that just as an introduction for a project like this, that some of the findings that these researchers have come up with might be a little obvious to us. They have been looking at a lot of different sessions here and come up with some findings. And I think that we knew a lot of these things already, or at least we had a sense of all of these things, but now we actually know them with a basis in scientific research, and not just by our feelings for this. And I would like to start by presenting a little bit about how this research project was organized. And then I will try as quick as possible to come to some of these findings. And then finally I will just explain a little bit about how you can see these findings, how all of this project is being made public in different ways. So first of all, if you would move on to the next slide, please. This slide here shows just sort of a research question for this project, which is exploring the didactic challenges that occur when high-level instrumental and vocal teaching is carried out using distance learning technology. So this is sort of the big question. So what happens when we take this extremely traditional way of teaching classical music that has been going on for many years, and put it into this space with a lot of technology? Then what happens? That is basically the question. And I would say that this study has been qualitative, and in that sense I mean that the researchers have been looking at observing some of our sessions and doing a lot of interviews, and they have sort of tried in discussion with our teachers to come up with some findings. It is not a quantitative study, and we've been asked by this sometimes, and we found there has been an American study, just as an example of this, in 2010, where they did a lot of measurements. For instance, they had a lot of timings of the sessions, and they, for instance, found out that for a distance learning session, the student will be playing 22% more time than in a traditional session. So the students are apparently playing a little bit more for these sessions. So this was in an older study. Our study did not do any measurements like that. It has had a different approach. Also, I would like to say that there has been 2 points of us to do this research project. First of all, we found out that there was no real useful research for us in this area, so we had to make our own. The other issue is that we would really like to develop the skills of our own teachers at the academy, their skills within distance learning. So this is a project for them to get a lot of practice and a really high awareness of what they're doing, but at the same time generating some research findings. Move on to the next slide, please. This here is a list of an overview, you could say, of the participants we had here. We had 11 faculty members, and we had 2 partner institutions for this. Obviously, we had to have a lot of distance learning sessions going on, so our research team had something to look at. And these sessions were carried out in cooperation with the Cleveland Institute of Music and the New World Symphony in Miami. And they were able to support a massive amount of sessions. I think we were around 40 masterclass lessons just connected to this research project. And And we had probably around 60 students involved in this. So it has been quite a lot. Research field, but a big research field, but also a lot of students and teachers getting involved in this and getting some experiences. Then we have 3 researchers from Aalborg University here in Denmark, and they are researchers actually specialized in didactics and how information technology interacts with teaching situations. They are not music educating researchers at all, and this was quite good for us because we felt that we have this expertise within music teaching already. So we needed someone to look at what happens when our teaching is meeting with all of this technology. And then at the bottom you can see I put in we had a project manager and some coordinators and some engineers. So it's more to tell you that it has been a lot of coordinating work to get all of this done. And for the next slide, please, we can see here just a quick overview. I'm not going to read all of this. You can read it yourself. Usually people read up what's on the slide, but I suppose you can see it already. This is the timetable of the project. And for the next slide, please, we can see this. This is a sort of, I tried to make an overview of how the observations were observed, organized. So what the researchers did was that they were given 4 sessions with each teacher, and they observed these 4 sessions. And you can see here, I'm not going to, again, to read all of this, but within these 4 sessions, in between them, they had different interviews with the teachers and also interviews with the students. And also the process was so that they would discuss the whole process with the teacher and try to find some good points that the teacher could bring on to the next session. So this is sort of an iterative process where the teacher should gain more and more knowledge and also more and more research results on the way. And the next slide, please, Thomas. For this, we also had on the side here, you can see at a 90-degree angle, we also, of course, had a lot of observations of conventional teaching because we needed to look at the differences as well. So alongside of this, the researchers would be here in our regular teaching rooms and see how the same teachers would interact when they are in the same room as the student. And for the next slide, please. We also put in 2 workshops where we met here in this room with all of the teachers involved. And we looked at a lot of video recordings of the sessions, and we had a lot of discussions and a lot of questions. And again, this was a good opportunity for the researchers to ask questions directly to the teachers. But also a very important point for us was actually that our teachers, they started discussing how they teach. And this was really interesting for us, and actually a quite new thing at a school like ours. The standing point from this discussion would be the distance learning, but we could actually see that the discussion went away from that also, which was quite interesting to have this open space for teachers actually discussing their approach to teaching. Okay, and the next slide, please. So we come to some of the findings of this project here. Really, we should have a drum roll now. No, let's see. And the next slide here. First of all, I have 2 overviews here, and for the first overview slide here, yeah, the researchers found there is no difference. The participants claim that there's no difference between distance learning session and conventional lessons. So this is just what some of the results would say. This is mainly what the students tell us. They say they walk into a session, and for them it's the same situation as being in the same room with the teacher. Especially for them it's the same situation as a master class. But the next slide, please, Thomas. Because of course there's another point of this, and a big surprise, of course, there is a difference. And actually for a lot of the interviews and a lot of the sessions, we could also see that of course there is a difference. It's not the same, and actually a lot of participants will say that distance learning is not just as good as being in the room together. Again, this might seem a bit obvious. But again, I put up these 2 counterpoints to say that usually the students will say, well, this is a situation like being in the room with the teacher. Whereas the second point, there's a big difference. This is what the teachers tell us. So the teachers, they feel these obstacles and this barrier of technology, they feel that much more clearly, actually, than the students would usually do. And the next slide, please. And actually, you can jump right to the next one that has a list of five points here. This are some overviews that the researchers they took from very old traditional research that looked at how we actually teach music when we teach, like the clarinet and the violin session you have here. And you can see we have these reproduction, production, perception, interpretation, and reflection. So you have these sort of 5 overviews that you could divide most of the lesson into. And what the researchers found was basically that the balance between these 5 elements changes a lot when you go into a distance learning session. But when, from a starting point from different teachers, they would also argue that this balance from teacher to teacher is very different. Also from instrument to instrument, this balance is very different. But they can definitely see that the balance changes. And generally, you would see an organization of the session where the student, as I said earlier, plays a lot. So we have the student playing, the teacher comments, the student make corrections and play again, and the teacher comments. So it's very much this ping pong back and forward. This means that the student become very focused on what am I doing right now in terms of what did the teacher say. They're not feeling each other in the same way as they would in the same room, and they're not interacting physically very much. This is very much about what do I do as a performer here, and what did the teacher do until as a teacher performing and giving some feedback. And this structure that the lessons go toward makes us this word that we came across very early on when we started distance learning. That's the word hyperfocus. And if you could move to the next slide, please. I just found 2 pictures of this. And this element is that we hear, especially our teachers telling us that they are extremely focused for these lessons. They spend actually more energy on a distance learning session than they would do on a conventional lesson. And that is probably because that they have to be so careful with the feedback they give to the student, because there's no other interaction than what is actually in the words. So you could say that the lesson will be more verbalized, and this also means that the teacher will be extremely focused on every single word. We've had some teachers telling that this is an advantage to them, that they really have to think about what they want to communicate to the student and shape it and then deliver it. Whereas other teachers will say, this is really an obstacle to me. I like to work more freely and play and walk around. And so this way that I have to deliver these packages to the student is a bit of an obstacle. You could also say that this hyperfocus can also come because that a lot of participants, they sense that there's actually given some more responsibility to the student as well. The student is sort of responsible for engaging with the feedback that comes only from the loudspeakers and from the picture. So the students, they feel, even though it's a regular session with a teacher they know, they usually feel that they are actually more focused, and they are more on a stage that like they would be in a really high-profile masterclass. And they really have to deliver something all the time for the teacher. And some teachers would argue again that this is a problem, that everything is not going as freely as if they are in the same room, whereas others will say that it can actually be an advantage. For instance, we have some piano students or singing students where the teacher has to explain something physical movements, and sometimes it can be an advantage that the student has to find out on their own and not just reproduce what the teacher did, but actually find the solution within their own body, and then maybe they will feel it better and remember it a little bit more. We have some teachers saying that, and some teachers not experiencing that at all. And then again, for this hyperfocus, it definitely seems like it is a little bit harder, of course, to sense each other in the room. I feel it right now. I'm sitting here in a completely dry, quiet room, and I can see all of you, and it's a quite intimidating, strange experience. Whereas if I was on stage, I could see. I know Keiju is really nice to give me some close-ups once in a while, but still, if I was on stage with you, I would have a much better sense of what kind of room am I actually talking into. And the fourth element for this hyperfocus that we experience is also that a lot of teachers and students, they feel that they feel this planning and all of these costs that are put into distance learning. There's a lot of planning going on up to a session, and everything has to be very tightly controlled, of course. And this means that they are always here on time. That's a good thing, of course. And they actually maybe take these sessions a little bit more seriously because they know of all of this planning and all of these costs involved in doing it. Then I have, for the next slide, please, Thomas. I tried to make two overviews. Here first the red and negative one with some of the obstacles, and don't worry, because in a moment there will be a green, more positive one with some of the advantages. But before I just say a few words about these, it's important to make a point that these obstacles and advantages, they are experienced extremely different from instrument to instrument. And actually it seems like that the difference from two instruments can be larger than the difference between distance learning and conventional teaching. So for instance, a cello teacher will be in a situation where distance learning is extremely close to sitting in the same room. They have focused, they sit on a chair with their instrument across the room to each other. We can make a nice picture with sort of a real life 100% size of the picture. The sound of the cello is transmitted quite well through the technology. So a cello teacher will usually say, well, this is exactly the same as being in the same room. Then we can have another point in the very other end of the scale, like a teacher teaching singers, where they have a lot of interaction. They have to touch and feel the muscles. They have to go close. I'm just banging the microphone, you can hear. They have to go close and look at the throat and movements. And so you could say the more bodily the teaching is based, the more, of course, you will experience this. So coming back to all of these obstacles and advantages, I would say that this varies to a very high degree from instrument to instrument. Also, of course, from teacher to teacher. We know some teachers, they just walk into this room and teach without thinking about it. And other teachers, they are really aware that there are microphones and lights and everything. And I would say we cannot say that it is the young teachers who feel very comfortable here and the old teachers are uncomfortable. It's not like that at all. It's just something in I think the way you are in a room that for some people are just very comfortable with this. And an important point rounding that up is actually that the researchers found that distance learning works in their world. They look at distance learning for university lessons and for public school teaching and everything. And they say that distance learning for music education, here in higher music education, it works fantastically from their point of view. It's the best it's the most effective distance learning they see anywhere, because we're able to deliver an extremely high quality of the transmission. And then they have a really interesting point that all of our teachers here and all of our students are performers. They are so used to going on stage and performing like this, where if you go to a university and you have a professor in history, will maybe not in the same way be able to stand on stage and just deliver something like a cello professor who just the night before was sitting playing in front of 2,000 people. So our students and our teachers are quite comfortable with this situation that could be intimidating to a lot of other people in the educational world. So just going quickly through these some of these obstacles here. Of course, you saw earlier for the demonstration we did with the clarinet that the musical interaction is quite difficult. The teacher and student are not able to play together, and that is of course something that our teachers they really miss. So we look into these systems, like Thomas mentioned, the Lola system and other systems where we have a very short delay, so they are able to play together. Also, I mentioned this bodily interaction that the student and teacher can touch each other. And also just the sense of being in this present in the same room and feeling each other. Maybe you have a view at your instrument, but you also have a view at the distance of your teacher out of the corner of your eye, and that way of being aware of everyone in the room is very difficult on the screen. So that is the eye contact. One thing is where do you look and what do you see on the sides, but also, as you may know also from Skype, that when I'm looking at you now to try to talk to you, I'm looking at the camera which is above the screen, and when I want to see how you look, I have to look down on the screen, so I'm sort of shopping where I'm looking all the time. It's the same with a Skype meeting, and that can be quite irritating that you have to look somewhere else, and that is also like a little bit of a barrier for the contact. Then I put the word staging in here, and that is actually something that we can see that this room here that we are present in is something that we have to set up for each single session. We have a lot of different teachers coming in here, so the room is a little bit impersonal. Usually all of our professors, they will teach in their own room where they have all of their teaching material, they have the pictures on the wall and the coffee machine or whatever they have. And they're really comfortable in this room and they can quickly go to the shelf and take something down and have a lot of inspirational talk with the students. Here they come into this room, which is a standard room that will match the uses for everyone. And that also changes the situation a little bit. Also, the reason I use this word staging is because that we are actually staging the session. We have the lights here, so it seems like a performance on stage. And for instance, an element like, now we move into also the dramaturgy of this session, almost like a play, like a theater play. How does everything start and begin? How do you say hello? How do you say goodbye? We have had my favorite, my favorite example is actually a teacher and student who forgot a session was going on, and they agreed to have coffee afterwards. And then all of a sudden said, "Oh no, we can't because we are 5,000 miles apart." So it changes a lot again from person to person, but here under this dramaturgy and the staging, we also have something like clothes. For instance, if we have a student wearing black clothes standing in front of a black piano, that would usually not be a problem in a conventional session. No one would even think about it. But here, since we have the cameras here and we have to convey this picture, it actually becomes a point how you look in terms of what the teacher should be able to see. And also things like, for those, I almost say those of you who wear makeup, it can be an issue also that you actually look quite different on screen than you're actually supposed to, or that you imagine that you're doing. The next slide, please. And the final slide here of the findings before I come to this, to just tell you a few minutes about how all of this is being made public to you. Some of the advantages here is, I mentioned already, this concentration and focus, that the students are really, and the teachers are really focused on what is going on. And also this empowerment of the student, that they actually should take in this responsibility of what they're doing and deliver it back to the teacher. That can be an advantage. Also, we are exploring new teaching forms, where we can have several teachers maybe observing a session, several students observing. We have here in Copenhagen now a fantastic project called the Global Audition Training Program, where we, in partners with American and European and also a Chinese institution, are making audition training for our students, where they meet concert masters from very big orchestras, from Cleveland Orchestra and New World Symphony and the Vienna Orchestra, is what we have started with. And they are actually able to make auditions for these concert masters globally and meet and discuss in a new room together. And this is a really interesting possibility for us that would have been, I couldn't even imagine how many train tickets we should have bought, or maybe plane tickets, we'll see, to make a project like that happen. Also, we have a good cooperation between some of our teachers. We have a few teachers who established a close relationship to a teacher abroad. We have our cello professor here has a very good connection to a fantastic David Geber at the Manhattan School of Music. And they actually sometimes meet and share some of their students and have a very personal relationship that they can keep on going in a more flexible way here than they would be able to if they had to buy plane tickets and hotels and so on. And finally, a shorter point is that, of course, usually we are recording all of these sessions and putting them online for the students so they can afterwards go in and have a look and learn from what they did. Of course, they can do that in conventional session as well, but it seems like that when we make a really high quality recording and put it available for them, that they will use it more than if they put up their iPhone and make a small recording. So I will try to wrap up pretty quickly. I know that we've run a little bit late. And for the final slide, please, Thomas. These are some screenshots of some small interview videos that we made here. And this is just to make a point of that for us it's quite tricky to make these findings public. We can see that the world that our researchers they live in is very different. They publish all of these research findings in scientific papers, and they will do that. We have already had some smaller articles, and we are waiting for a very big article now, which is in peer review for the German Waxman publisher, which is a really good place for us to be. But still, these scientific publications can be quite far away from our world where we are teaching music. So a conference presentation like this can help. We have had a few of them earlier on also, and we will continue to do that whenever we can. We will tell about what we found here. But finally, and now we come to these screenshots, is that along with the researchers, we are building this portal, this page on our internet, where we will have the researchers coming up with their research results, and these will be backed up by interviews with our faculty members. And an important point of this is that this is the researchers. They are presenting what they found from their perspective, but sometimes we need a teacher to back up the facts for this. So we try to keep clear what is the researcher saying and what is the music educator saying. And this web page here will be finished here within some months, and of course it's something that we will share in the network, and somehow we will find the list of participants and share it with everyone here. And also a final point for this is that this is something that we can keep on building on. I suppose, for instance, that this presentation I'm making now, we will put that on a video link as well. So within some years, this should be built up to a larger and larger archive of a lot of different videos with knowledge about distance learning. So this was actually what I had in mind for this. Usually we would have a round of questions afterwards, but I know that we have scheduled a panel debate with a list of really good people in this area, so I think we should stop now, and then if any questions arise or any issues for discussion, we should keep that for the panel discussion. So many thanks for your attention for this.